You got that on tape so I can show my wife, right?
Yeah, we got it.
She really said it, honey. Thank you, Lisa. When I was diagnosed, gosh, it's been 6 years. Can you believe that? 6 years ago, I told 2 people outside of my family, and they're both with me here tonight. Lisa, who I trusted implicitly, with my secret, because on TV we're promoted to be perfect. The promotions department says, watch him, he's got great hair, he's got a great face, he's got great suits. Oh, this one's kind of weird because he's got some weird thing. I mean, that's how I felt. That's how it felt to be diagnosed bipolar. I felt like a traitor to that promotional aspect of the business. I couldn't tell anybody. So me coming forward and telling Lisa was a big deal, but she hugged me, and we cried a little bit, and she said, I'll do what I can. I don't know what to do, but I'll be there for you. And the other person I told is Phil, who also works at WBZ. He's here tonight. I asked him to come. He didn't know I was going to point him out. He'll kill me afterwards. But Phil was the other person that I trusted implicitly. The 2 of these people here were the only 2 people outside of my family that knew besides my doctors. I was hospitalized for 2 weeks 6 years ago, and all the public knew because the Boston Herald had called and asked where Ken was, is that I was ill, because I was. We didn't go into detail. For good reason. It was a personal thing at the time, and I wasn't ready to share. But when I did get up in front of the television in Minneapolis, and it was actually at a National Alliance on Mental Illness walk, where there were 4,000 people, I was just hosting it, and they were out there, and they were holding banners and signs saying, we have to end the stigma, we have to stop the stigma. And I volunteered to do my secret little part without telling anybody that I was bipolar. But I looked out there at all the banners, and it just suddenly spilled out of my mouth. I'm connected with you people because I have a bipolar 1 disorder. And the crowd just fell silent, because it was what we want, is what Lisa said, is we want people to open their eyes and say, you? Really? We want to break that not stigma, because Lisa's not one to stigmatize, but the general public's view of what a mental illness is that it's somebody who lives on the street with a bag of booze, that doesn't have a job, doesn't have a family, that's very unproductive in life. That's a lot of people's views of this. But when I came forward, you're right, I got thousands of emails and texts from people. It was amazing, and it was absolutely freeing for me to share my story. So when I met Dave Wellstone, his father was Senator Paul Wellstone. He was killed in a plane crash 10 years ago, the senator was. And he was a huge mental health advocate. In fact, one of the biggest laws in the land that has been passed recently is the Paul Wellstone Mental Health and Parity Act, Addiction Act, for parity between mental illness and every other physical illness there is. So if a doctor treats you, your health coverage treats you for a heart disease, they can't then discriminate for the same diagnosis for a mental illness. They can't tell you anymore that you only need 2 visits to the therapist next week. Because if somebody has cancer, you're not going to say you can only go to the chemo treatment twice next week, because that's what we think. Well, they can't do that anymore. So that's what the Parity Act has done, and what it's trying to still do. It's still trying to get in there. So I met his son at this walk where I revealed my secret, and we decided to make our own little nonprofit together. And we started the Wellstone Barlow Mental Health Initiative, which is out to help eliminate stigma. And that's our goal, is what Lisa mentioned and what I just did, is that we want to tell the stories to make it okay. To make it, if I limped up here tonight, you might wonder, and then ask me afterwards, what'd you do to your leg? But if you see somebody in their cubicle at work and they're just downtrodden, and they're just not themselves and you know it, people are afraid to ask, are you okay? Is there something I can do? Is everything okay at home? People are so afraid to ask because it's still such a taboo subject. Not for people here, because if you were that, you wouldn't be here supporting this, I know. But the general public feels this way. So when I came out with this, then it was on the radio, and then it was on the newspaper and big banner headlines. My wife said, "My God, what have you done?" Because for all those years, we tried to keep it secret to protect my TV career. First thing I did was look up celebrities who have bipolar, because I didn't want to feel alone. And I found a lot of them, a lot of very well-known people. Winston Churchill. Wasn't diagnosable back then, but there are thoughts that Abe Lincoln had either bipolar or depression, or perhaps both. Ben Stiller, one of my favorite comedians. People think, really, him? He's funny, though. Well, yeah, it's okay to be funny and have bipolar. So it's people like that who have already set the stage nationally and maybe globally, but when somebody on your local TV comes on and it happens to be a weather guy that you've watched for a while, and he says, "I've got this thing. It's not a weakness. It's not a character fault. It's a chemical imbalance. And I take medication, and when I tend to get off track, if I start to feel symptoms, I'm very vigilant about my own feelings. I know when I'm starting to get a little ramped up. I know when I feel mania coming on, which is the high that you get, which, by the way, is absolutely wonderful, but not good. It's as bad on the high side as depression is on the low side, because nobody wants to be depressed, right? Well, when you get manic, it kind of feels like you're drinking without drinking. You get this real buzz in your head, and the doctor probably knows what I'm talking about when he hears it from patients, is you just get this elation that, pardon my French, that you're king shit. That you can do anything. You're on top of the world. You can go 90 miles an hour on the highway. You can spend all the money you have. You don't even think about it. That's when it gets dangerous. Getting there is okay, but once you reach a certain point in that mania, it's dangerous. So I know the points of not sleeping. That's my first number one hint that something's coming on. So I call my doctor and he adjusts my meds. Or, on the other side, when I simply can't get out of bed some days. There are days I cycle very rapidly, so I can have concurrent days where I am very high and then the next day not be able to get out of bed. And to struggle with that on TV was very difficult, because I would get on the air when I was in my down phase, and I'd put on this great show, and then I'd go back in the office and collapse on the desk and want to go to bed. So that's what the depression does to you. So then if you feel that coming on, you call your doctor and you get your medication tweaked as well, and everything is good. So as long as you maintain that hypervigilance, I call it, the self-vigilance, self-awareness, you're good. And that's what my message is to people, is that I'm a success story because, first of all, I had a wonderful wife, wonderful friends who supported me and still do through everything I do. My wife said she can tell when I'm getting manic because of my footsteps across the kitchen floor. She can tell in the rapidity of my movement if I'm getting amped up. We've been together 30 years. She knows my footsteps enough to say, "Are you feeling okay?" That's how good she is. That's how good she is at helping me. So with help like that, and help by friends like this, life is great. And that's my message to people. You can be successful. You can be a happy dad with 3 wonderful kids. You can have a healthy marriage. We've been together almost over 30 years now. You can do that. And it's okay to have a mental illness. And soon, I hope, it just doesn't become the phrase of today with the whole gun control issue, which it is an issue. But there are some people saying anybody with any mental illness should own a gun. Well, if that's true, you're going to disarm half the police force who have PTSD. They'll never have a weapon because PTSD is a mental illness. So if you're saying anybody, that blanket statement like that, there is something to be said for that. But that's another issue, and I do believe there is an issue there, but you can't blanketly say anybody with a mental illness can't have a weapon or whatever, because it's not all the same, and the doctor can attest to that too. But I just want to leave you with this thought again. Everything will be okay. If you have if you have a mental illness, if you think you have a mental illness, you have somebody in your family who has a mental illness, if you think they may, it's okay to talk about it. It can only do good if you do it in a kind, caring way. And what I'm trying to do is be an example to people that, not that I'm #1 king of the world, but I'm kind of an example that you can't have it all. You can have a mental illness, but you know what? You can have 3 great kids, a great marriage, and a great career, and wonderful friends. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And I've had the pleasure in the past couple of months to get to know Ken Lambert, as most of you sound like you do. Mostly long distance. This is the first time we have met, actually. I lived here when Kaylee and Shane, when that happened, so it was deeply burned into my mind. I did not know Danielle and Ken at the time, but I distinctly remember the episode happening, and my heart just sank, as I'm sure everybody's did. And I can't tell you the resilience that I've seen in these 2 people to do what they're doing. It gives me chills every time I think about it. Danielle is here. Ken is going to speak, so here's Ken Lambert. Ken.